Dare to enter the abyss. Subscribe now and let the dread of Bendy's realm ink its way into your darkest fantasies. The gates of hell have opened wider than ever before. Embrace the horror and subscribe to the channel that dares to unleash the true face of fear. Is your heart strong enough for hell's most terrifying spectacle? Subscribe to our channel and find out if you can survive the reign of the Ink Demon. The head honcho's 1RD POV. Grumbles and murmurs echoed in the vast throne room of hell's mightiest palace. Rosie and her cannibal posse were curious as to why the king and queen had summoned them on such short notice. The three verses were bored shitless. Valentino had some unfinished business with angel dust. Velvet was impatiently waiting in her seat for the meeting to begin and end so she could post and chat with her adoring followers, and Vox was just annoyed and slightly frightened that he had to sit next to Alastair, the radio demon of all people. Alastair, on the other hand, was just humming his favorite tune with extra added radio static, minding his own business. Even the Ghoulish family, consisting of uptight pompous owls, were called upon by the king. What could be so important that he wanted to call all of the Pride Ring's overlords on a Saturday? As if on cue, the devil himself arrived just as that question was floating around in everybody's heads. Lucifer Magna, with his apple cane, angelic top hat and demonic grin, stared down at the lessers in his glorious palace, and everyone was soon silenced. He made his way to his gold and marble-encrusted throne, and not long after, two other powerful beings approached their respective thrones. Queen Lilith, the wife of Satan, smugly looked at the once boasting overlords and sat down next to her husband in a silver and obsidian carved throne of her own. And finally, the couple's daughter Charlotte Magna, who rather gingerly sat in a slightly smaller rose gold throne on Lucifer's left. There were many names for Charlie. Some call her the Antichrist. Some call her the Princess of Hell. Although most of, if not all, beings in hell call her the Accident. That was a name reflected in the eyes of almost all the overlords in the current room, who stared down at her with disgust. Some were even trying their best to stifle a laugh directed at her velvet cough. After some more uncomfortable silence, Lucifer was the first to speak up. I'm sure you're all wondering why I have summoned you at the start of the weekend. The reason is that a certain associate of mine has claimed that he has created a way to solve the overpopulation problem here in hell, which also acts as an alternate solution to the yearly exterminations that take place. And where is this associate of yours? Inquired Rosie. Unfortunately, he hasn't arrived yet, stated Lucifer with a hint of annoyance whilst he looked upon an empty chair. Valentino suddenly bursted out with, seriously? That's what you dragged us here for? The exterminations work fine. So what if a couple dickheads get killed? They should have known better. One of the members of the Ghoulish family then spoke up. I must agree with him, Your Highness. The exterminations always bring prominent results, and up until now you've never seemed against it. If you don't mind me asking, does this happen to do with your naive daughter's eyed? Do not mistake my viewpoint of this yearly agenda, along with that of the princess, shouted Lucifer, almost deafening anyone within close vicinity of him. To answer your question, I've always been against the exterminations, not because I have some out-of-place moral objection to taking life, but rather that the fool upstairs thinks it's fine to send his lowly foot soldiers down into my domain, and for a short while seize control of my kingdom. He continued, Dad, if I could just... Before Charlie could finish, her mother had made a hand gesture to shut up before she could press on any more of the devil's nerves. This time, Alastair decided to ask his own question. If you don't mind me asking, Your Majesty, I am rather curious as to who this anonymous associate of yours even is. After all, you still haven't mentioned this chap's name as far as I'm aware. Lucifer seemed to be hesitant for a second or two before finally answering the radio demon. Let's just say he is a person that not all of you are on the best of terms with. I'll even go as far to say that a few of you in this room are probably afraid of him. Yeah, right, mumbled Vox under his breath. Do you have something to say, Vox? Queen Lilith suddenly remarked, as now all attention in the room was focused on him, gazing with piercing eyes that burned away any previous confidence he previously had. Vox stuttered. Well, it just seems a bit crazy the way you put it, Your Majesty. I mean, a demon we're afraid of? Seriously, we've got the king and queen of hell, the three versus the Ghoulish family. A bunch of meat-crazed psychopaths in this bitch, he exclaimed while pointing at Alastair, who in turn responded with a petrifying cackle distorted by radio static. I must say that is rather rich coming from a computer screen that pleasures himself with a moth pimp just to get by, Alastair remarked. Valentino got up out of his chair. I'm not dealing with this shit. As he made his way out, Vox on the other hand just grew more agitated and was glaring at Alastair with killing intent. Velvet saw this as a good opportunity to take a video. You wanna go, you sack of horseshit? Vox shouted with undeniable hatred. Alastair and Vox were at each other's throats. The cannibals were readying their dinner plates and utensils for the aftermath of the great show. Valentino was leaving everyone behind, not giving a shit. Velvet was being Velvet, and the Ghoulish family were talking amongst themselves on other more pressing matters such as where to host the next great ball. Charlie and Lilith looked at each other, and then at the king, knowing that he was about to blow a gasket, and actually covered their ears in fearful anticipation of the oncoming storm. That is a no without warning. Lucifer was suddenly interrupted by a thunderously loud bang that sounded from the palace doors swinging wide open with such force that Valentino was knocked onto his back before he could make it to the door handles, and all the previous chaos taking place was immediately stopped dead in its tracks. Everyone turned their attention to the doorway, and to their surprise, joy and sheer horror, it was him. A dark, insidious shadow quickly enveloped the room, snuffing out all the candles save for the one big hellish fire pit in the center of the room. Valentino, still on his back, crawled away slowly from the being standing in front of the entrance, trying his best not to draw its or anyone else's attention. The entity in question took a sweeping glance at the throne room and everyone within, and then started to walk inside. The Overlords were trapped in stunned silence. All the while the entity revealed more of itself to their unwavering eyes. The tall, pencil-thin, shadowy figure looked like he was starved for an excruciating eternity, with his black bones nearly popping out of their joints. From head to toe he was consumed in jet black ink which ran in vein-like streams down his entire carcass. His head, which was abnormally large for his body size, possessed notable demon horns, and his face was concealed in even more of the nightmarish dark liquid which was constantly dripping down to the hard floor, making light repetitive clicks that eerily echoed through the vast hallway. His only distinguishable facial feature was that cartoonish, merry, malevolent smile drawn all the way to both sides of his face, forming an endless evil grin that would give Alastair a run for his money. This ghost of a demon was slowly, gravely, silently stepping over to his chair in the meeting room, all the while making heavy strained thuds that rang in the ears of all the Overlords, who were at this point frightened out of their minds. Well, most of them anyways. Alastair kept his usual Cheshire grin on display, and the king and queen kept a neutral face to this whole ordeal. After what seemed like an eternity of suspenseful waiting, the demon finally arrived at his chair and took a seat right next to the beyond terrified Charlie, who was shivering at the mere presence of his unholy aura which screamed of merciless death, endless decay, violent vengeance, and loathing hatred. She knew this demon all too well. Everyone in hell did. For this was the monstrous overlord known as Bendy the Ink Demon. With the three verses frozen in fear, the cannibals shocked to the bone, the radio demon still smiling, the mouths of the Ghoulish family sewn shut with alarm, and the royal family of hell still sporting their calm demeanor. It was this inky overlord who finally broke the thick ice with a sudden cheery voice. Bendy, so about this idea I had. Where it all began. Hell was just as hellish as usual. The odd turf war, booze, sex, and just about anything else you can associate with sinning. This was just after another extermination, a yearly event created by the devil and the big man upstairs, where angels descend into hell and decrease the surplus population. It was precisely 35 seconds after the cleansing was deemed over that a very strange object fell from the sky and hit the road. It was a dark, rippling puddle of ink-like liquid that was making some strange gurgling and bubbling noises. Every demon who saw it just carried on with their day as usual. Little did they know that this would be the humble beginnings of one of the most revered and powerful beings in hell. All of a sudden, a car raced across the road and on the puddle, splashing it everywhere. The culprit was revealed to be a lame demon who just had a bit of fun with a certain kinky spider in boots. Lame demon Travis, thanks for the fun time, hot stuff. Angel dust, yeah listen. You keep this discreet, you hear me? I don't want word getting out that I'm offering my services to randos on the street. It was a quick cash grab, got it, Travis? Pfft. Whatever you say, slut, he angel dust, chaw. Such an insult. Let me know when you come up with something creative to call me a sack of poorly packaged horseshit. Tell the miss I said hi peck schnookum. Travis angrily drove away while Angel Dust went to go and get his favorite drug, which was also his name, sake. I'm pretty sure you know how the rest goes on. The puddle, meanwhile, was slowly crawling back together and seemed to be getting bigger. The puddle then rose in height and width like a bubble, and without warning, pop. A living cartoon was revealed, who had no idea what was going on where he was. He looked at his surroundings and then up into the air and noticed a pentagram forming the sun. Thanks to my fantastic detective skills, I have deduced that I appear to be in hell. Well, at least it's better than Ukraine. The little demon decided to have a wander around and eventually found a mirror store convenient, I know, for which to observe himself. He was fairly shorter than most other demons, and he was colored entirely in black and white. He had a nifty little bow tie, black leather boots, white gloves, pie-cut eyes, piano-esque teeth, and some cute devil horns on his comically large head to finish it off. Mickey wishes he could be as handsome as me. Strikes a pose. The peculiar kept on walking down the streets of hell, nodding his head to the sound of gunshots and explosions as if it was like a musical beat, until he eventually arrived at a mean-looking club. Alcohol shudders, the most vile substance known to man. Let's go in. He went inside only to be greeted by banging, disorientating neon light strippers, sleeping drunken bastards, and yes, alcohol shudder. The demon chose to ignore the unpleasant scenes before him and hopped on a stool near the bartender. Bartender, what you want? He spoke in a gruff voice. Can I have a glass of water? The cartoon demon looked around, confused about the sudden laughter, until the laughter eventually died down, and he got a shot of beer in response from the bartender. Well, that was rude, he thought to himself. His thoughts were interrupted as a group of cocky drunk imps tapped his shoulder from behind to get his attention. Imp 1, I can tell you're new around here. Why don't me and my boys here show ya around and maybe have some fun? He spoke with an undertone of lust. Imp 2, yeah, that way we can get real close. You know what I'm saying? The cartoon looked at the group with a neutral face. Imp 3, it's rude to not respond, bitch. At that moment the demon started snickering, which quickly turned into loud laughter at the joke the group was insinuating. Imp 2, what's so funny, dick? He responded angrily. Imp 1, forget it, you're coming with us. He pulled out a pistol while the other two pulled out switchblades. The imps were about to get violent until they noticed some black tears streaming down the cartoon's face. Imp 3, this bitch crying, he scoffed, if only he knew. Slowly but surely the cartoon grew in size and his features were becoming less recognizable as ink was now rapidly pouring out of his eyes and mouth. His entire body grew slimmer, revealing his rib cage, and he grew a devil's tail. His whole inky body was glistening in the neon lights, and his endless laughter was growing more and more distorted with TV static. The smile on his face reeked of maliciousness, and his whole face was now covered with leaky ink. The imp group grew terrified as the figure stepped down from his stool and walked closer to them. Demons from all around the room were now watching this play out. Out of stupid ambition, the third demon went in for the attack, only to get punched square in the face with a stained glove hand. The resulting impact blew through his entire head, and a mixture of brains, blood and bone showered everywhere, on the walls, on demons and drinks, and on the lights. The body fell to the floor with the rest of the body's blood spurting out. The remaining two screamed in terror and tried to make a run for it, only for the second demon to get pulled back by a dark-clawed hand. With the figure behind him, the imp had to experience the unimaginable pain of having his very spine being ripped out of his measly body by the demon's sharp teeth. He dropped to the floor coughing blood and just barely conscious. He wanted to scream, but he was too weak. His existence was ended by a big stomp to the head courtesy of the figure's misshaped talons, cracking his skull and crushing his brain. One imp left, and quicker than a flash, he was already pinned on a table by the demon's large gloved hand. Imp 1, PP, please let me go, I'm sorry, OKK. The demon continued to stare at the imp with a blood and ink-stained face that oozed venomous hatred behind a sadistic grin. Imp 1, what to the fuck are white? He screamed in desperation. The figure got closer to his face, to the point where the imp could smell his decaying breath. I am Bendy, he said with ragged breaths. Bendy, you have seen death, you have heard death. You have smelt death, and now you will taste death. With a murderous chuckle, he lifted the imp up to show to his already petrified audience, and he slowly extended inky tendrils to the imp's mouth. The imp tried his best to struggle and escape, but to no avail. Helpless, he watched the black tentacles slither up his face with insidious intent and enter his mouth. The taste of ink was undeniably vulgar, but it wasn't like he could criticize. With force, the tendrils were shoved down his throat and he started to choke. Once inside, the tendrils got to work and split up. A tentacle slid out of his eye and another shot out his nostril. His body was rapidly filling with ink and his organs were being shredded and melted in the dark acid. Bendy watched the display with glee while the rest of the club were frozen still in traumatic shock and indescribable horror. When he was finally content, the tentacles slid out of the lifeless body, and for a few seconds, everything was silent for a few seconds. Without warning, the body practically blew up as it regurgitated a hideous mixture of blood, organs, ink and vomit. Bendy showered every single corner of the club with his surprise. No one was safe from the putrid shower of gore. When the body eventually ran out, he threw the shriveled corpse across the club, where it landed on an unfortunate stripper on the catwalk. She cried and screamed in distress, but no one would dare even move after that whole ordeal. Bendy stared down at the crowd for what seemed like an eternity until he eventually turned around and made his way out the doors. But not before saying one last line. "Bendy, that's all folks, it's free real estate." A week had passed since the whole incident at the bar and word had spread fast about the inky newcomer. Terrifying rumors were circulating about, and while most people believed them, there were some that weren't as smart. Of course, a certain someone was quick to put them in their place. Bendy was wandering around after getting into a messy ordeal which completely ruined his totally not blood-stained bow tie. "Bendy, my prized possession," sobbed. "Now I feel like I'm forgetting something." He decided to have a wander in order to clear his head. He wandered and he wandered and he wandered and he wandered. And you'll never guess what he did next. He wandered. "Bendy, that's it, I need myself a new bow tie," he exclaimed while skipping in one direction, only to walk backwards to where he was standing. Bendy, wait a cotton-picking minute. I've been wandering for a good while now, and I feel like everyone here has something that I don't," he said while looking at people in their homes. Sitting in their homes, watching TV in their homes, drinking in their homes, having SE. "Bendy, that's it, I need me some property." And with that, he set off to find a place he could call home. It would need to be big, comfy, warm, have the latest technological features, and most importantly meet the bare minimum standards of luxury that one would expect when looking for their future resi. "Bendy, perfect," he said while looking at an old, tiny, crooked, cold shed that smelt like tar, cocaine and meth all rolled into one. Okay. But before he could settle in at his humble abode, there were a bunch of hookers hanging around, and he didn't want them spoiling the scenery of a city that is constantly on fire. So he decided to walk up to one of them and ask for them to leave. "Bendy, excuse me, miss, but would it be of any trouble for you to politely find somewhere else to conduct your daily boozy hooker? So you want a shag?" Bendy looked at her blankly. "Bendy, no, I just wanted you to see if you and your friends could move somewhere else. Hooker, either you want a shag and pay or fuck off, which is it?" the hooker retorted. At that point, a light bulb went off in Bendy's head. Finally, after a week of hard work, his masterpiece was finished. A beautiful sculpted garden consisting of dead flowers, black grass, fiery weeds, a beautiful blood and ink fountain, and a bunch of inside-out, mangled, bloody corpses consisting of hookers and a hobo hanging off the fences. "Bendy, I bet in time, with a hammer and a nail and a lick of paint, this place will put Disneyland to humiliating shame." In time it certainly would. A dark palace of despair would arise from this wretched shack, and on the palace's throne would sit the ink demon, a being whose power would spread nightmares and seed fear into the hearts of all who witnessed it. But until then, Bendy, time to get to work. As he grabbed a paint can and literally started to dip his tongue into the can and use it to paint the shed. What the foo, indie dancing devil, darling. A year had almost passed, and the exterminations were soon about to occur once again. Bendy, over the months, had slowly grown a league of followers which worshipped him as much as they feared him. His shed had also improved considerably, as it was now much larger and fancier, had a functioning state-of-the-art factory, and even had different arrays of ink-filled corpses decorating his corrupted gardens, from hellhounds to sinners, and he even managed to catch himself a family member of the Ghoulish family. The family in question were still in the mindset that the owl was just drunk somewhere. Bendy, however, would show them what happened. In fact, he would show everyone in hell who he truly was. A monster. The clock in the center of Pentagram City was ticking by slowly until all of the intricately designed handles reached the 12th hour. A loud bong was heard throughout the city. The extermination had begun. Angels were now pouring out of blinding white wormholes in the dark red sky. The exterminators, with their sickly twisted grins, now scoured the massive city for any signs of unholy life. The ones that were unfortunate enough to get caught and killed by them were obviously in the dark about the whole routine that goes on down here in hell, as most other sinners and beings hid away in secret bunkers and safe houses. But as the denizens of hell sat back in relative comfort behind their house walls, little did they know that their peace would be rudely disrupted. But not by the angel's Bendy showtime. He exclaimed as with an almighty snap from his fingers. Every single TV, radio and broadcasting device was sparking and uncontrollably leaking ink. It's safe to say everyone was confused by whatever was happening, but they wouldn't be confused for long, as their devices soon started an old-style cartoon intro from the 1930s. Those who knew what this was started to cower and hide away under their blankets. But for the many other demons in hell who had no idea what was going on, well, let's just say they were in for a real treat. The cute little cartoon displaying Bendy to the world soon ceased and cut to a black screen. And eerie music was now starting to play. Note, in this scene you can imagine Bendy on live TV or radio in his demonic form, going insane and killing every angel and demon in sight, while still singing and keeping in tune with the song. Keep in mind that for the end bit of the song -425 onwards, I personally see Bendy ending it off with him holding a massive ball of angels and demons and crushing them all with just one hand, showering hell with a truly gruesome and nightmarish display of ink, blood, and angelic and sinner organs alike. Also, this whole show of brutality is being displayed in all of hell, meaning all the rings can see it too: pride, wrath, greed, lust, you name it. Sorry, I've rambled on. Enjoy. After the darkest show in hell was finally finished, cartoon Bendy showed up at the end and did a cute little bow before saying, "That's all, folks." Everyone, and I mean everyone, were at the very least shaking and crying in their seats with sheer terror. Overlords alike were either curious, afraid, or both, and a certain ruler of hell was very intrigued. This was the moment when all of hell truly met the Ink Demon, an indescribable being of immense hellish powers and a psychopathic, bloodthirsty mind to match. The lesser creatures in this infernal pit of suffering have now seen a true monster. The dark overlord of horror, comedy, and music. Say hello to Bendy, becoming pals. Bendy was walking down one of hell's many streets whilst having an amused look on his face after seeing every demon he walks by either run away, hide, or even bow a little before quickly walking away. One buff demon, however, thought it would be wise to confront Bendy at a corner since he didn't believe what happened during the last extermination actually happened. "Buff, hey, you're not fooling anyone with your little show, Buster, so why don't you go cry in a hole and regret your existence?" I couldn't justify this dude's reasoning even if I tried. Bendy looked at the demon in a judging way until he spoke up. "Bendy, just as I thought you, my friend. Have no brain, enigmatic. Buff, why are calling me fucking stupid?" From out of nowhere, Bendy pulled out a stepladder and was suddenly wearing doctor's equipment. He quickly climbed up the ladder. "Bendy, judging by the fact that your head makes an echo when I knock on it, knock echo, and I can see to the other side of your head through your ear peaks through a vastly empty skull, you must indeed possess no brain, enigmatic." Bendy shook his head in disapproval. "Buff, you little dick, Bendy, but don't worry, chum, for I know the perfect medicine. If you don't have a brain to think before you speak, then you don't have a proper reason to live." Without warning, Bendy formed a large black blade from his hand and sliced clean through the demon's stomach, causing his guts and intestines to spill out onto the dirty street. Before the demon even had a chance to scream in agony, Bendy proceeded to twist the demon's head a full 180 degrees, sounding many sick cracks from his neck and causing a waterfall of blood to spurt from his mouth. Bendy then completely decapitated the creature, letting the body fall lifelessly to the ground. After a few neat ball tricks with the head, Bendy finally decided to kick the head with a tremendous amount of force into the red sky. Bendy looks like he had a real head for heights, am I right, folks? Bendy looked around and saw that everyone was either cowering in fear or had ran away faster than the speed of sound. "Bendy, oh come on, that was a good one. Some people can't recognize a good joke when they hear one these days, can they?" Bendy turned around to locate where the comment came from, and in a shadowy alleyway he saw a creepy smile, seemingly floating in the darkness while a hint of radio static could be heard in the background. Bendy looked at the figure with curiosity. Bendy, see, you like the joke? My friend, it was delightful. Bendy, finally someone is speaking my language. So may I ask who you are, dear fellow? I go by many names thought up by the lower classes down here. Namely the radio demon, but you can call me Alaster. Bendy, well, Alaster. Perhaps we could talk more on this matter with a good OL beverage. Alaster, of course. I have nothing else better to do. Alaster and Bendy then went on a walk together down the streets, chittering and chattering about current affairs and the state of the comedy industry until they reached a rather pleasant CAF. The two walked in, and as usual, everyone within was now quiet and shaking with fear. Bendy walked up to the counter. Bendy, I'll have a cup of tea with milk and 2 spoonfuls of sugar, please. Bendy said with a smile and was about to place some money down on the counter from his magic wallet, but Alaster stopped him. Alaster, no need, my friend. Last I came here the beverages here were free of charge. Right, Mr. Willman? Alaster did a subtle glare at the man behind the counter, and he quickly nodded yes while he went to get their drinks ready. The two comedians found a table to sit at, and with their drinks hastily served by the waitress, they started to talk to each other again, slowly but surely becoming the bestest of friends with one another, although their demonic shadows were eyeing each other up as if they wanted to viciously murder each other. Alaster, by the way, I saw that show you put on when I was on my walk during the extermination, and I must congratulate you. I haven't been that entertained since the stock market crash of 1929. Ha 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 ha, so many orphans. Bendy, why thank you, my good man. I know I'm relatively new on the block and I've only heard a few of your broadcasts, but they are simply marvelous. I can't wait to hear more. Alaster, and you're sure to hear more. I've recently made an investment into a hotel that the one and only Charlotte Morningstar owns. Bendy, Morningstar, you mean the princess? Alaster, that's right. A hotel where she hopes to redeem the loathsome sinners down here. I, on the other hand, want to watch the scum of the world struggle to climb up the hill of betterment, only to repeatedly trip and tumble down into the fiery pit of failure. Bendy, sounds peachy. Well, I'm afraid I have to cut this conversation short. Animating business calls. But I'll be sure to find you if you need any help with your entertainment. Alaster, thank you. And I'll be sure to do the same in return. Alaster, friends, Bendy, friends. From that day on, an alliance was formed between two wicked spirits of mystery and chaos. While it seemed like a perfectly normal friendship on the outside, the two demons were now partners in hosting the graphic, tormented and sinful comedy show that is Hell. But for now, a gift for the Goetia. Bendy was walking down the decrepit streets with a special package in his hands whilst happily humming. He was visiting the Ars Goetia, a royal legion of owl-like demons who were very close with the devil himself. Why was he going there? Let's find out. Bendy stopped at a large fancy gate which stood in front of an even bigger marble palace fit for multiple kings and queens. Two guards were standing proudly in front of the gates, fearing nothing, ready for anything hell could throw at them. That is until the guard on the right leapt up and screamed like a girl when he saw Bendy. Guard Kevin, Guard Steve, Kevin, you scared the shit out of me. Kevin shakily pointed down to the short cartoon devil standing still in front of them with a big goofy smile on his face. Guard Steve, what, that's what you're afraid of? Are you fucking kidding me, Kevin? Guard Kevin, do you not know who that is? Steve stared at Bendy for a second or two, who was still standing idly by with an amused look on his face due to the whole situation. Guard Steve, no. It looks like a Mickey Mouse knockoff. Bendy developed a slight frown after that comment. Guard Kevin, that is Bendy, you know, the INK demon. The same one who killed countless angels and demons on the last extermination day. Quite possibly one of the most powerful and terrifying beings hell has ever seen. Guard Steve, nope, never heard of him. Guard Kevin, you know. I don't know why I'm even surprised. You never know about these things. For the last decade you've missed my birthday, my wedding anniversary, our scouting club, my walks with Grandma, and you even forget to feed Oliver. Guard Steve, hey. Who doesn't forget to feed a goldfish every once in a while? Guard Kevin, he's your goldfish. Bendy, I hate to interrupt whatever bizarre, hilarious, existential crisis you're having right now. The two guards looked at Bendy with Kevin still being scared and Steve with a, I do not give a shit face. Bendy, but I need to pass through and meet up with the Ghoulishes rather urgently. Plus I need to deliver this package for them, so can I come in? Bendy asked with an innocent smile. Guard Steve, no. Bendy frowned a bit after that rather quick rejection. Bendy, pretty please. Guard Steve, still no. Get outta here, you piece of shit. Guard Kevin, whoa double there Steve. I'm sure we could consider at least giving him a reservation. Right. Guard Kevin, I'm so sorry about him. Bendy, sir, he's just a little oblivious sometimes to who he addresses. I think we can book a meeting for next Thursday. How about that? He said with a hint of hope and fear rolled into one. Bendy, but I can't, otherwise the gift will spoil. Guard Kevin, oh, is it a type of food you've got in the box? Bendy, sir. Bendy, you could say that. Bendy replied with a very small hint of malice in his voice. Guard Steve, I told you you're not going in. Kevin, stop trying to defend this little bitch. Guard Kevin, Guard Steve, shut up. This fucker may scare you for some reason, but not me. In fact, I'm dealing with this little shit right now. Steve then turned around and went to a speaker on the left side of the gate and buzzed it. Waiting for a response. Guard Steve, hey. We've got an intruder on the first gate. I want some help in kicking the shit out of him. Description. Well, as he turned around to get a proper look at the intruder, he suddenly froze on the spot. For what he saw would forever haunt his nightmares, if he lived to tell the tale. Standing mere inches away from him was a tall, crooked figure with streams of ink flowing down his body, and staring into his soul was a giant devil face that was drenched in ink, with all the features concealed in the black liquid, except for his never-ending demonic smile filled to the brim with razor-sharp teeth. As Steve was standing there, unable to scream out of pure breathtaking horror, the nightmarish creature of the abyss motioned with his right hand to Steve's left. Steve slowly looked over to the desired direction, and what he saw nearly made him vomit. Kevin was pinned to the gate archway by dozens of sharp, black blades that pierced through every joint of his body and from every angle. His bottom jaw was hanging from his skull by a bloody thread, and his eyes were squished through his skull and into the back of his head. All of that was done in a matter of seconds. No screaming, no cries, nothing. It was as if this monster had muted the poor guard and had proceeded to slaughter him as soon as Steve had turned around. If that happened to Kevin, what was going to happen to Steve? Bendy, call off your friends. Bendy spoke in a quiet but clearly angry tone with ragged breaths. Steve did as he was told and quickly explained through the speaker that it was a false alarm, all the while trying his best not to stutter or even do anything that might sound suspicious or anger this creature to the point of killing him, just like it did Kevin. Bendy, opened the gate. Steve shakily grabbed his keys and opened the gates to the palace. Now the ink demon could meet the Ghoulish family. As he walked through the gates, he suddenly turned his entire head 360 degrees to stare at the already petrified guard to make sure he didn't try anything. Steve cowered on the floor, whispering apologies to Bendy, who continued on his way to the Ghoulishia's home, box in hand, still keeping his hellish scribbled eyes on the guard until he made it all the way to the mighty front doors. Bendy transformed back into his cartoon self, acting like nothing happened, and rung the doorbell. Not too long after that, an imp butler opened the door slightly to peer through, where he met eyes with Bendy. Butler, are you here to see the Ghoulish family, sir? Bendy, how did you know? Butler, I cough. Saw your little fiasco down there. He replied with an almost unnoticeable shaky tone to his answer. The butler let Bendy in and walked with him to one of the many extravagant rooms that were tucked in almost every single corner of this glorious, golden jewel-encrusted main hall. Bendy thought, it's not bad. The pair continued to walk down the expansive corridors until they reached a darkly lit room with colors such as blue, pink, and purple. In that room there seemed to be a bit of an argument that Bendy couldn't quite make out from the outside of the room. Bendy, well, thank you for. Bendy was about to thank the butler but had noticed him speed walking down the corridor. Bendy, well. The jolly sketch then walks right into the room to find a whole room filled with members of the Ghoulish family, bathed in ghostly lights and colors, whilst having a banter about all the topics you would think of when it comes to an extremely rich family. But the one topic that kept popping up in their conversations was the disappearance of one of their family members. Stella, is there still no sign of Andrealphus? Male Ghoulish one, unfortunately no. It's never usually like him to vanish into thin air like this. Male Ghoulish too, which is why I'm telling you all that he has been kidnapped. We need to send a proper search party who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. As we speak, Andrealphus' life could be in mortal danger. Male Ghoulish 1 I don't think it's that bad. Insert name here because I'm lazy. And Drillfist is a tough customer. Even if he went out alone, he has powerful magic on his side. Wouldn't you agree, Stella? Well, Bendy ahem. The whole room of elves looked towards the direction of the noise to find out it was Bendy standing there. Without warning, every owl stood shot straight up from their seats and summoned dark murderous spells into their hands, which were all directed at Bendy. Bendy, I'm not that hideous, am I? Stella, what you did was hideous, Bendy. The entirety of hell saw it, including us. Female Ghoulish 1 don't think for a second that you can kill us, you psychopathic monster. Male Ghoulish 2 you may be a powerful demon, but you're no match for our combined power. Bendy smiled in a scheming and plotting way. Bendy, what makes you think I want to kill any of you? The Ghoulishes looked at him and each other confused. The ink demon had massively grown in recognition ever since the cleansing massacre. And it seemed like he feared no other overlord. If he wasn't here to harm any of them, then why was he here? Bendy, instead I came here to deliver this lovely little gift. Bendy extended the box outwards to the cautious group of owls waiting for one of them to take it and peek inside. Bendy, come on, it doesn't bite. Ghoulish Male 1, give it to me. Stella, what are you doing? She whispered loudly. Ghoulish Male 1, we're going to be here all day if we don't see what this demon has to offer, so I will do what all of you are too afraid to do. The male Ghoulish took the box from Bendy and looked at it in more detail. It was a simple darkly colored box with a pretty white ribbon around it. After some inspection and glances in Bendy's direction to see if it wasn't a trick, he finally raised his hand and pulled on the ribbon. The ribbon fell to the floor and the Ghoulish slowly opened the box. He stared at the contents within the box in utter shock and disbelief. Male Ghoulish 2, what is it? The first male Ghoulish was now trembling slightly in fear he hadn't experienced for a long time. He suddenly dropped the box after so much shaking, and what rolled out onto the floor petrified everyone in the room except for Bendy. He stood there with an increasingly crooked and inky smile. And Drillfist, the missing Ghoulish, was no longer missing, as his decapitated, rotten, ink-stained head was now in the center of the room. As a look of terror and anger washed over the Ghoulishes' faces. Stella, I'm going to kill you. Just as Stella turned around to beat the cartoon to an inky pulp, she was greeted with a toothy smile stretched onto the face of a skeletal, ink-drooling monster that was her height and staring daggers into her soul. The Ghoulishes were ready to battle the ink demon until one of them spoke up. Female Ghoulish 1, don't. Male Ghoulish 2, what are you talking about? He killed one of our own. Female Ghoulish 1, and what makes you think you can beat him? He slaughtered an entire army of exterminators and did their job for them along the way. Who knows what kind of unforetold powers he has? So if you wish for your lives to be spared, then stand down. The rest of the Ghoulishes looked to Stella for advice on what to do in this current situation, and to their surprise she nodded towards the female Ghoulish, signaling that everyone needs to stand down. Reluctantly, the male Ghoulish snuffed out their spells and stared at Bendy with anger and vengeance lurking in their minds. All was tense and quiet between the demonic souls in the room until the ink demon spoke up. Bendy, like I said, I'm not here to harm, only to deliver this Ghoulish, Andy, right? Male Ghoulish 1 and Drillfist, he said furiously. Bendy, whatever, he muttered under his breath. This Ghoulish was very cocky and oblivious. He saw fit to enter my home and practice his destructive magic on my property. So I had to take matters into my own hands and show him a piece of my mind. Bendy chuckled in a deep and gargled tone which only unnerved and angered the Ghoulishes more. Bendy, I've been here long enough to know what your family is like. They're greedy, overly confident. You all think you're invincible. Well, it's time for you all to face reality. Suddenly all the lights faded away and darkness creeped up on the Ghoulishes. They looked around frantically, desperate for a source of light, and they got one. A spotlight flickered on and in the middle stood Bendy. You can change some of the lyrics if you want, but I really wanted to include this song somewhere. Also, sorry if I haven't updated in a while. It's just that this chapter is really long. There should be a GIF or video here. Update the app now to see it. After the eerie performance, Bendy slithered up to the Ghoulishes and spoke one final warning in an evil, menacing tone that could even make the devil cower in his boots. Bendy, I never want to see another Ghoulish on my turf for as long as I live, or you will all suffer a much worse fate than you, colleague. Are we clear? All the Ghoulishes slowly nodded while trying their best to not look intimidated. But deep down, their hearts were on the brink of bursting. And with that, Bendy slowly sunk into an inky puddle beneath his feet, still sporting his maniacal grin until he and his ghoulish ink had disappeared out of sight, leaving the Ghoulishes in a state of horror and disbelief. All of the family eventually heard from this incident, but none dared to go and confront the ink demon. The being in question was now at his home, sitting on a decrepit throne while admiring his handiwork. His home was nearly complete and he had big plans for it in the future. But before he could put all of this into motion, he had to take care of some competition, a task that would be triple the challenge: the moth, the doll in the TV. Valentino, where the fuck is Angel? Vox, how the hell am I supposed to know? Valentino, last I checked I assigned you to be my eyes and ears, Vox. But it's clear now that even you can't do one fucking job. Vox, he's probably just gone to another gangbang that he found on your schedule. Besides, I've seen him kick ass before, so what's the problem? Valentino, the problem is that Angel is getting a bit too big for his boots. He needs to be reminded that his daddy is still here, and that his daddy will always have his way. Or else. The two were debating on Angel Dust's whereabouts, since they already checked on the Has-Been Hotel, which they heard about on the news. They were stumped as to where a famous porn star could go. At this point, Velvet had arrived at the doorway. Well, when I say arrived, it was more along the lines of kicking the door down. Vox, Velvet, I just got that shit fixed, he sighed. Velvet, out of breath, you won't believe who just arrived here. Valentino, Vox's hairdresser. Valentino smirked. Vox glared at him. Velvet, okay, you can come in now. My followers are gonna be so jazzed up, she squealed. She stepped aside from the doorway, and not too long after, the three could hear a set of squelching footprints echo eerily through the hallway. The steps got louder and louder and louder until they were suddenly silenced, and the one and only ink demon himself emerged from the darkly lit corridor. It took a while for Vox and Valentino to properly take the situation in and actually work up the courage to say the first few words in the very awkward and unexpected first meeting. Velvet all the while was taking snapshots of the ink demon and posting like nothing was happening. Valentino, you're Bendy, I presume. Bendy, correct. You must be Valentino, and that must be Vox. Velvet already introduced herself. Vox, what the fuck do you want? Bendy, now Vox, there is no need for such profanities. I merely seek to create deal with your boss. Vox, do you have any idea how many have said that? And how many times that trick has always failed? I know what you're up to. All three of us have seen the cleansing massacre. Bendy, oh really, tell me, how was it? Did the camera get my good side? Vox, first, it was fucking horrific. Velvet, and awesome. Vox, second, that's not the point. The point is that your little show showed us all what kind of a demon you are. A deceiver, a cold killer. That may not sound as bad in hell because this place is full of them. But you're an overlord. You actually have the power to tip the hierarchy in your favor. That makes you even more dangerous than the rest of them. Oh, and thirdly, you have no good sides. Valentino, what do you propose? Bendy. Vox, Val, you can't be fucking serious. He. Valentino, you should watch your tongue. Vox. If he wants to make a deal, I want to hear it. Vox, boo. Valentino, shut the fuck up. Everything was silenced in the room after Val's outburst as Bendy now turned to the moth to negotiate. Bendy, I'm nearly done on a little plan of mine, and it hopes to solve a lot of current issues here in hell. I plan to open next week, but I'm afraid due to limited advertising not enough people will come round, so I was wondering if you could help in spreading good words about it to the many citizens of hell. After all, you are in the near vicinity of my project. Vox, what is this project of yours? Bendy, all will be revealed in time. Voxy. I just need all three of you to approve. Valentino, that sort of service doesn't come cheap. What's in it for us? Bendy then pulled a small dirty bag out from somewhere behind him and presented it to the three. He then took a seat and opened the bag, spilling a few of the contents onto the table. The contents of the bag turned out to be a weird dark powder that was primarily black, but also had an oily texture. So many colors were shimmering off the powder as the neon lights of the room danced above. Bendy, go ahead, have a sniff. The three overlords looked at him and each other in a perplexed way before Valentino decided to take out a straw and inhale the bizarre substance through his nose. He was instantly hit with a shot of ecstasy. It was like a blazing multicolored fire had been set off in his body, which sent him on a sugar rush and relaxed him all at the same time to an immeasurable degree. He truly got addicted to that substance with just one sniff. Valentino what W is TT that? He exclaimed with multiple breaths and with amazement struck on his whole face. Bendy, I'm calling it an inculant. This is just a test batch, but we plan to make more and in liquid and smoking form. Judging by the look on your face, am I right to assume you will take our trial batches? Valentino, yeah, of course. And we'll be sure to spread good word about whatever it is you're doing. You don't happen to have more right now, do you? Vox, I'm still not convinced. What if he just poisoned you as well? Velvet poison or not, I want some of that fucking action. Bendy, unfortunately, that was all I had on me at the moment, but I can sweeten the deal even further for you. Bendy then leaned into Valentino's ear while Vox subtly grabbed a knife from one of the nearby drawers in case the ink demon was up to something. Bendy then whispered a simple message to Valentino. Bendy, I know where angel dust is. Valentino's eyes widened in realization and evil glee as he properly evaluated the information he was given. Valentino, are you sure you're not lying to me? Bendy shook his head. Velvet, whatever you just said, could you repeat it? My followers didn't hear you. Valentino, shut up, Vel, where is he then? Bendy, I will reveal his whereabouts when the time is right. Until then, can I trust that if I supplied more of my inculants to you, then you would advertise my project?
Valentino, sure.
Just don't keep me waiting for either your information or your drug. Vox, I still think you're making a big fucking mistake, Val. Out of all the demons to be associated with, he is not one of them. Valentino, hey Voxy, be a good dick for daddy, and fetch me some of my favorite wine. Vox was about to protest, but he saw the anger behind Valentino's expression, and decided he did not want to get his ass beat. As he sulked out of the room, he could have sworn he saw Bendy sneak a smug smirk in his direction, only fueling the burning hatred he had for this disgusting overlord further. Valentino, oh, and get a glass for our new business partner, will ya? He half shouted this was exactly what Bendy wanted, an alliance with the Triple Versus. Granted, it was only temporary, for he had a much grander business future in mind, and he did not want these drug-addicted, porn-craving freaks spoiling the view. His project was ready, and he was about to change the landscape of hell forever. Velvet Vox, could why get me a Diet Coke while you're at it? A royal interruption. The ink demon was now in his murky lair, and sitting in a makeshift throne on top of various ink-covered objects and trinkets. It seemed like he was daydreaming a little until he looked up and cracked his cartoon knuckles. Bendy, the time has come. He then proceeded to morph into his demonic form, and he pulled a lever situated next to his seat which opened up a panel in the floor, and an old mechanism snaked towards its summoner with the top being covered in a dirty blanket. Bendy pulled the blanket off with a mighty flick of the wrist, and a comedically large white button was revealed with a blotchy message scribbled on it with ink. Begin. The lights of the room dimmed and the old TVs that once illuminated the throne room turned into an ear-splitting static frenzy. Ink candles levitated in unison and marked miniature pentagrams across the walls, floor and ceiling. All the while Bendy was still sitting there with an ever-growing malicious grin on his face as he slowly reached over to press the button. Closer and closer and closer until all he had to do was push down. Bendy, ha 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 ha, ding dong. Silence fell heavily in the throne room as all previous actions were paused in place. Bendy was also frozen in pure shock. A short while passed until Bendy thought he could resume his activity of dramatically pressing a button. He thought, ding dong. Bendy stared in the direction of the doorway again. Mouth agape, Bendy, the audacity. He had enough. He marched to the front doors of his home with a cartoonishly angry face and demeanor until he reached the doors and swung them wide open. Bendy, we haven't opened yet, so could you be a little more patient and wait until... Bendy didn't properly finish his sentence when he saw who was standing before him. The king of hell himself, Lucifer Morningstar. Oh, how the tables have turned. An awkward silence was felt in the air between them. Honestly, Lucifer found it a bit relaxing. A nice getaway from the constant screams and gunfire that plagued the depraved Pentagram City. A silence that was quickly shattered once Bendy opened his mouth. Bendy, you're a lot shorter than I imagined. Lucifer, excuse me, Bendy, just saying. For the undisputed ruler of hell. I thought you would be taller given how many materials I've seen you on. TV, radio, magazines. Honestly, I think it's false advertising. Lucifer, well, at least I don't have to introduce myself. Do you know why I'm here, Bendy? Bendy, are you here because you're also the royal paper boy? Lucifer, no. I'm here because I want to know exactly what you're up to. I don't usually involve myself in the affairs of the lesser beings down here, but I couldn't help but notice that you have rapidly grown in power in the short span of time you have been down here, which both intrigue me and worries me, so tell me, what exactly are you up to? Bendy, how about I invite you into my humble abode first and get you something to drink? Then we can have a little chit-chat. Bendy, with his characteristic smile, allowed the king to enter his home, and the two indulged in long conversations on what Bendy had in mind for this burning cesspool. Except none of them really gave the king what he was looking for. It was always a surprise, or just wait till you see with Bendy. The conversations weren't a complete waste of his time though. He had some smashing tea courtesy of the Ink Demon, and he even got a date of when he and the rest of hell could finally expect answers. Lucifer was now leaving the murky premises belonging to Bendy in order to spend some quality time with his wife. That was until Bendy tapped him on the shoulder to gain his attention. Bendy, you see, your majesty, I've always been one for a live audience whenever I perform. So is it at all possible for you to bring the rest of the Pride Ring's rulers for my little announcement? The king sighs in thought. Lucifer, I wouldn't usually give such favors, but if I do, you must promise to give me something in return. Something worth a lot more than any treasure. Understood, Bendy. Well, it's only fair. Lucifer, very well then. When would you propose we meet? Bendy grins in eager anticipation and excitement. Bendy, shall we say this Saturday 9 o'clock? All caught up. Well, here we are. Back where this humble tale began. Everything had now fallen into place. A great spirit was born, and hell was soon going to be a big playground for this spirit. What has all this been leading up to? You're about to find out, Bendy. So, about this idea I had, Lucifer. You're late, Bendy, Lucifer said with a calm yet agitated tone. Bendy, I am fashionably late, your majesty. I know no other way. Alaster, well, I must say this is a pleasant surprise. How are you, old friend? Bendy, excited for the most part, Al, as I intend to change the order of things down here, starting with the cleanses. The whole room then murmured in curiosity and slight mockery of this idea that Bendy of all demons could solve a problem that in their eyes didn't exist, although they knew to keep it to themselves if they wanted to stay in one piece. Vox, what are you gonna murder all the angels again? Vox retorted, now mostly overcoming the shock of the Ink Demon's arrival. Bendy, nah. I have come up with a way of solving the whole overpopulation problem here in hell, thus eliminating the need for the exterminators. Rosie, it wouldn't happen to involve a feast now, would it? Rosie's cannibal friends salivated at the thought of tasting heavenly meat, as they so rarely had the chance to indulge on what the angels had to offer. Bendy, nope. It involves my newly constructed factory. For further details, allow a colleague of mine to visualize for you. Bendy then flicked a drop of ink from his fingers into the center of the room, where it quickly enlarged in size to become a large ink puddle. From out of the puddle, a black hand shot up and grabbed the edges of the dark portal, hoisting itself up and revealing itself to the other overlords. It looked like an average sinner, except it was covered head to toe in ink, and instead of having a head, it had an old rusty projector that flickered wildly. The strange creature then turned to a blank wall in the meeting room and started playing a reel through its eye lens. An old-school video started on the wall showing a black and white factory in a similar cartoon style to Bendy himself, when suddenly a tune started to manifest. Yada yada, you can change lyrics if you want, yada yada. After the song concluded, everyone had a confused look stamped on their faces. Lucifer, I didn't understand a word of that. Everyone nodded in agreement while Bendy slapped his face and groaned in frustration. Bendy, projectionist, you're fired. Without warning, the projectionist literally caught on fire and screamed in pain while he eventually melted to the floor in a heated, inky and bloody mess. As you can imagine, this brutal act caught everyone off guard. Bendy now stood up and walked to the center of the room. Bendy, to put it simply, I have recently constructed my own factory here in the Pride Ring, and I will put up offers for sinners of all kinds to come and work for me in the factory. Once they have agreed and set foot within my humble abode, they will never be seen again. Not only does that get rid of the overpopulation of sinners, but it also negates the need for the yearly cleansing. I know it's genius. Lilith, and what makes you think my husband would agree to this plan of yours? Bendy, because I know his secret, he said with a wink directed at the king himself. Lucifer's full attention was now on the Ink Demon, giving him a look that screamed, be careful with what you say next. Bendy, have none of you ever wondered how this whole problem even began? Have you ever wondered how the cleansing even came to be? Well, I won't spoil the answer for any of you. But let's just say our king and their king have never exactly seen eye to eye. Everyone except for Lucifer and Bendy were confused and desperate to learn more. Lucifer stared at Bendy with blazing hatred in his eyes for giving too much away. Bendy only smirked. Bendy, but the past is in the past. And I want to talk about the future. Bendy spoke up, gaining everyone's attention once again. Bendy, the angels won't have to risk their lives and the demons can finally be put to some good use. It's a win-win. Valentino, and what will your workers be doing exactly? Making more sweet drugs for your good old partner here. Bendy, inklings are a side project, sure. But I want to revolutionize the TV industry. Cartoons, merchandise, theme parks, you name it. All centered around yours truly. Bendy gestured towards himself in glamorous fashion. Vox, I don't know if you know this already, but TV is my thing, asshole. Bendy, oh yes, of course I've seen your work. Pandering to pornography, drooling over drugs, and begging for sips of shutter alcohol is totally making the most of the industry at your disposal. Say, when are you going to get the award for biggest loose-wired simp? Vox, sparking with fury at the cartoon, shot up out of his chair and fired an electrical spell straight at Bendy, only for Bendy to nonchalantly catch it with one hand and, in a flash, throw it straight back at the foolish TV. While the spell didn't kill Vox, it certainly did a number on all his limbs as Vox laid on the ground in agonizing pain and totally helpless. Vox glitching, oh motherfucker. Alastair, ha 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 ha. I haven't been that entertained since the stock market crash of 1929. Ha ha ha, so many orphans. Lucifer, if you don't mind, could we get back to the subject at hand, Bendy? Lucifer spoke as if nothing had happened in the past 10 seconds, while everyone looked on in even more fear at the power displayed by the ink demon. Bendy, of course. With a unanimous vote from our Overlord friends and your endorsement, I can promise that my business and my overpopulation solution will be an unqualified success. So what say you? Bendy looked at all the Overlords intently behind his ink-covered demonic eyes, waiting patiently for them to make the right answer. All the while Lucifer was pondering about this plan in his head. But just before a verdict was reached, a certain someone spoke up. Charlie, what about the workers? Everyone immediately stared at the princess with a seriously look printed on all their faces as Charlie grew increasingly nervous, with all the attention piercing into soul like 1,000 knives. Bendy, on the other hand, slowly twisted his large head nearly 180 degrees to glare at the princess, prompting many sick and disturbing cracks to sound from his neck and echo through the hallways. Charlie, well, you said that, the workers would never be seen again. So are you going to take care of them or give them breaks? You can't overwork them, alright, he. Velvet, hey princess. How about you go work there and we won't have to see you again? Everyone laughed at this comment, and all that mockery was directed at the princess, whose self-esteem and confidence had been all but diminished. Lucifer may not have been laughing, and deep down he wanted to intervene, but he had to get her daughter to learn somehow. His wife, however, was prepared to give these lowly creatures a piece of her mind when her claws grew and her eyes flickered a crimson red. She would show these demons to never harm her daughter, but she soon found out she wouldn't need to do anything. Without warning, Bendy stomped on the ground with a tremendous amount of force, enough to shake the very foundations of the palace and cause visible cracks to creep up on the walls and ceiling. The building, the contents, and the people within were shaken to the core. Even the king and queen were caught off guard at the earth-shattering event. Outside the palace, demons felt the tremor below their feet and shuddered as they felt a familiar dark force behind the hellshake. A deathly silence fell upon the Overlords for what seemed like the 100th time as all their fear-stricken eyes descended down to the ink demon and to the princess. Bendy twisted his whole black skeletal frame to match his head and faced the princess in a scene that could only be witnessed in a nightmare. Bendy, if you have something to say in the matter, dear Charlotte, I would like to hear it. He spoke in a soft yet haunting manner. Charlie, I was just wondering if the workers who go there are going to be cared for. You can know, Bendy, why would you care? Charlie, it's just that. Bendy, oh that's right, it's because even though you're the literal Antichrist, you just can't bear to see demons get hurt. Well, I ask you why. Why do you care about these rapists, these drug abusers, these alcoholics, these murderers? They led a life of shameful sin and their wrongdoings must be punished. One way or another. Charlie punishing them is one thing, but forcing them into eternal slavery. Charlie shot back with regained confidence in her beliefs. Bendy, they would be put to good use instead of being needlessly slaughtered by the angels. Surely you can agree with that. Charlie, I have a feeling most demons would want nothing to do with your business anyway, so how can you possibly convince them? My hotel. Bendy is just another hopeless dream that is crushed by the whole population of hell. And if you don't wake up from that dream, Charlotte, it will eventually crush you. Charlie desperately wanted to convince Bendy, and most importantly her family, that redeeming sinners is possible, but she soon noticed that Bendy was creeping up to her in a slow, ghostly fashion, his demonic ink-toothed smile growing ever wider. Bendy, I haven't been here as long as you have, Charlotte, but I know a true demon when I see one. You, Charlotte, are not a demon. You're just an angel that is disrespected and unwanted by her own parents. Doesn't it just hurt? Bendy at this point had his black claws scraping on the desk in front of Charlie, while his face edged ether closer to Charlie's own. Bendy, whisper, Velvet might not be far off. You could use my help. I and I alone can free you from this disgusting, wretched, unwanted body and mind. And once done, hell can finally get the future ruler it deserves. Charlie was at a loss for words. She had never felt so low. She couldn't even bring herself to look up at the ink demon who had finished his piece and was sliding away. Her hotel, her dream, was he right? Bendy, do we have a result? Everyone continued murmuring towards one another until eventually a unanimous vote was agreed upon. In support of the factory, Lucifer had gave Bendy his endorsement and instructed him to produce prominent results by the end of the month. If this plan was going to stick in the long run, it would have to have the ability to hold the strain of hell's demon population. Everyone was now finally allowed to leave except for the Ghoulishes, who had stayed a little behind in order to discuss. Male Ghoulish, if this plan succeeds, that prick will have even more power and influence than he already does. Stella, you think I don't know that? Listen. I have the number of a worker. He is very skilled and gets the job done quickly. I'm sure he can handle whatever that cartoon can throw at him and end his rule. Male Ghoulish, I hope you're right for all our sakes. Meanwhile, the prick in question had just started his leisurely stroll back to his home, but was suddenly stopped by a hand on his shoulder. Valentino, you promised another part to our deal, remember? Bendy. Where is he? Bendy, patience is a virtue, Val. Angel dust will be in your hands shortly. That kinky spider will soon be the one stuck in my web. Bendy hummed and giggled menacingly. Bendy, in the meantime, just keep snorting my sugar. Bendy walked away with a hint of sass, but on the inside his head was screaming with joy. Joy for the operation to be initiated. Joy for his new career. Joy for his power over hell. Things will never be the same again.